HIMT, Hindustan Institute of Maritime Training.
Okay, now here we have got the entire set of rules with the explanations. These rules shall apply to all vessels on the high seas and in all waters connected therewith navigable by seagoing vessels. There is no doubt about this. It clearly explains the parameters under which the entire regulations for avoiding collisions are framed. But it also says nothing which is contained in these rules shall interfere with the application or with the operation of special rules made by the government of any nations. In other words, while giving you the basis for collision avoidance, it also complicates matters. First says, in all waters, high seas and connected waters navigable by seagoing vessels. However, you also have to follow the rules made by local authorities. Not only those rules made in by the local authorities, but also for the navigation of vessels in inland waters, lakes, and others. That already comes into the first section where it says in all waters connected therewith navigable by seagoing vessels. Traffic separation schemes are specifically mentioned here to say traffic separation schemes may be adopted by the organization for the purposes of these rules. Therefore, you have a very clear-cut set of rules issued, and by following these rules, you can ensure that there is no opportunity for you to go wrong. I just now mentioned that case study about the second mate who was not, if it was a third mate, a fresher, you can't condone it, but may say that all right, he is inexperienced. But as a second mate, he has had adequate seagoing experience to understand this. And in that case, the vessel was coming from the starboard side, no room for error, it was not restricted visibility. Alright, the rules also mention that in case the collision or the close quarter situation cannot be avoided by the action of the giving the vessel alone, the other vessel also shall take such action as will best aid to avert collision. Which rule is this?
17.
Action by stand-on vessel. It comes under any condition of visibility, and also it comes under vessels in sight of one another. Okay, so as I said, you need to be able to interpret these rules not only in the matter which is expressed in there, but also what is implied. There are certain conditions which are implied. What is implied? Something which is not specified. What is implied in the rules? That you are competent, that you are aware of, you have situational awareness, and you are capable of taking the right decision at the right time. Any question? I see some question marks floating around. Ask. If you don't seek clarification, you may not have the opportunity to clarify. That's what I'm here for, clarify your questions. Okay. And the next one, we're talking about responsibility. What does the rule specify? It says, nothing in these rules shall exonerate any vessel or the owner, master or crew thereof from the consequences of any neglect to comply with these rules, or of the neglect of any precautions which are required by the ordinary practice of seamen. What is this ordinary practice of seamen? What comes to your mind specifically with collision avoidance rules?
Basics.
Keeping of a proper lookout, navigating at a safe speed, ensuring that you have situational awareness. Above all, when you find, especially in the beginning, you are up on watch and you find several ships around and you start to get nervous. What is your first reaction? What will you do?
Reduce speed. Keep the sail speed.
When you are in doubt, call the master. That is what he is there for. That is what he gets paid for. Never hesitate. If you've all sailed on board. You have read Master's standing instructions and his special orders. Have you come across that phrase? If in doubt, don't hesitate to call me. There you are. He has also specifically told you that you are to call him. So why do you hesitate? What is doubt? He says when you are in doubt, don't hesitate to call me. So now you don't know. Shall I call him? Shall I not call him? What will he think? What do all these questions amount to? D-O-U-B-T. You are in doubt. Call him. Remember one thing, he is depending on you, the master. Your attitude should be, there is only so much I know, he knows more than me. If I am unable to handle the situation, I will always seek advice, I will always call the person who has got more experience and probably more knowledge. It's another thing when you are talking to each other. The cadet is the most knowledgeable person. When a cadet is talking to another fellow, that master, oh, bach gaya. I was there, I saved the situation, I saved the ship. By the time he becomes a third mate, he is not so cocksure. He still knows everything, but he is a little careful about his statements. When he is a second mate, he is still arrogant in this respect, but he realizes that there is a whole lot that he doesn't know. When he is a mate, yeah, the old man is a fool. But doesn't matter, I'm going to be there next. When you're a master, you know nothing. You're safe because you have a cadet. That is the attitude. But in reality, we have to take a reality check. Everyone has got his particular responsibility, he's got his particular role. You are there as a team member, the entire team has to perform. And for the efficiency for the entire team, everybody has to give their required output. When you realize this and you work on that basis, you are a good seafarer. You will, that is the ordinary practice of seamen. In construing and complying with these rules, due regard shall be had to the dangers of navigation and collision, and any special circumstances, like you are in a loaded condition, or you, due to the special construction of your vessel, your maneuverability is slightly impaired, including limitations of the vessels involved, which may render a departure from these rules necessary. Understanding the words and putting the sentence together gives you a better comprehension of what is the meaning underlying. Words put together say one thing, but the entire thing conveys a meaning. So this is expressed, that is implied. Then we come to rule 3. General definitions. It goes on to describe each type of a watercraft, each type of a sea-going, ocean-going watercraft, which are covered by these rules. It specifically tells you what fishing vessels are. It tells you the vessels laying cables or engaged in servicing a pipeline, laying pipelines, servicing a pipeline. All of this, you should be thoroughly aware of these 3 rules, because this tells you how you can understand the maneuverability and the performance of each of these types of vessel. For example, what is the vessel constrained by her draft? It means a power-driven vessel which, because of her draft, in relation to the available depth. The same, she is not constrained by her draft when she is in the ocean-going mode, when she is in an ocean. But when she is in a narrow channel, yes, her maneuverability is limited because of the draft. Most of the people talk in terms of ram vessels and CBD vessels. Please don't use these abbreviations. The reason being, somewhere down the line you will lose the meaning. You will lose why a vessel is constrained by her draft. In order to retain that relationship, continue to use the full name. Now we come to the wing. Use the full term. Wing in ground. Has anybody seen one of these? Do a sit. Tell me. I'll tell you a secret. I haven't seen this myself. I've seen pictures, yes. And, all right. I'm not sailing anymore, so the chances of my being able to see one of these is becoming less and less. However, you do have the opportunity and you need to keep your eyes open. Understand that there is an animal called a wing craft. What it looks like? There is a picture, not in this one. I've seen it in some of the books. Silpandarkar also. Okay, anyway, now you have to understand some of these you can readily imagine, the others is there. Where can you find information on this? Absolutely right. It's a whole wealth of information that you can obtain from the internet. Use it. YouTube also. I'm not saying YouTube is bad. When you have the resources available to you, whether it is good or bad depends upon for what purpose you use those resources. Anything anything and everything. Today, in the competency courses, when we come across a word or a term, especially in legal application, becomes difficult to figure it out. What do we do? Immediately, out come the smartphones, Google it in, and I've got half a dozen different versions of that. Wikipedia usually gives you a meaning, and thereafter the usage in reference to particular context is also available. Use them. So we have done the rules 1, 2 and 3. Be absolutely certain on your interpretations.
So medium craft and seaplane is same or different?
No, they are different. The definitions also tell you that it is not the same thing. As per the IMO resolution A9102, 22 adopted on 29th November 2001. The term wing and ground craft means a multi-modal craft which in its main operation mode flies in close proximity to the surface, utilizing surface effect action. A seaplane lands on the water and it takes off from the water. As long as it is operating on the water surface, he follows the rules as for a powered vessel. But once it's in the air, she is now an aircraft. Whereas the wing and ground craft flies in very close to the surface. It is not on the surface. So that has got a special definition and meaning, and it has come into force from 2009, January 1st, 2009. Sorry, 2003. Part B, steering and sailing rules. Now this is the main bread and butter of your service at sea. Under no circumstances will any leeway be given in your interpretation of this section. There are certain parameters which you have to adhere to regardless of the condition of visibility. There are others which apply only to vessels in sight of one another. And the third, when vessels are operating in or around, in the vicinity of areas of restricted visibility. Let's check each one of this Rule 4. This section, the rules apply to any condition of visibility. Alright? Every vessel shall at all times maintain a proper lookout by sight, hearing, as well as by all available means appropriate in the prevailing circumstances. What is this prevailing circumstances?
Existing.
Yes.
Existing.
Surrounding circumstances,
Whatever.
conditions.
Yeah, I know, whatever is around you. What are these? What does it specifically talk about?
Collision avoidance.
All these rules are for collision avoidance. We call them ColRegs. Collision regulations. Are there regulations for collision? No, they are regulations for avoiding collision. What are these prevailing circumstances and conditions?
Whatever is ongoing,
Yeah.
ongoing conditions around us.
Depends on the condition we have to.
What are we specifically referring to?
Natural stability.
That it's not that. The main thing is that you may be having a congestion of traffic. There are no special rules for the maintaining of a proper lookout when there is no traffic around, when you are out in the open ocean with no ships to be seen, or when you are in a narrow channel and there's plenty of traffic going both ways. It is the same. And these are the special circumstances prevailing at that particular moment. You have to maintain a proper lookout by sight, as well as by sound, as well as by all other means. What is this all other means?
All other equipment,
Whatever is available.
whatever is available.
Whatever we are doing, what is this, the course that we are discussing under? Use of radar, use of ARPA. Yeah? When you are using these various applications and shall I say various aids to navigation, what is the most important thing?
We should not completely rely on them. They can,
If you can't completely rely on them, why should you have them?
we cannot completely rely on them.
No, completely, all right. Not completely, but completely. No, you have to be aware of how the navigational aid works. You have to be aware of what exactly the navigational aid can do. And more important, what it is that it cannot do. Correct method of operation and being able to interpret the data which you obtain from this. That navigational aid, that particular piece of equipment can only give you data Artificial intelligence is still in its infancy, where it cannot think for you. The day is coming when it is going to be able to do so. Because on land, we already have autonomous vehicles, driverless vehicles, which move about in traffic. That same concept is going to be applied to ocean-going vessels, and the day is not very far when we will have automation to such an extent where we will have.
No manpower.
Now, I still have one reservation about not having any people on board. I'm not sure we are ready for that yet, because when you're in the middle of the ocean, machinery failure, you still need some people to rectify it. You just might have a skeleton crew who are qualified in various disciplines. Gone will be the day when you had specialized navigators, specialized engineers, specialized electrical and electronic personnel. All of these activities, machinery, etc., will be controlled by integrated circuits and by cards. There will be several spare cards available. You diagnose, remove the faulty card, put in a good card, and move the ship. Completely unmanned, even though the Japanese sailed a vessel across the Pacific without any persons on board. Yes, the vessel sailed out of Japan. They took everybody off. Vessel approached the United States, and just before she came into the coastal area, they put people back on board. So that is so far as the unmanned crossing was concerned. They still felt the need to do this. However, maybe I won't see it in my lifetime, maybe you'll see it in your lifetime. Okay, leaving that and coming down here. Safe speed. Now, I still have to find somebody who can explain to me what is safe speed. Can you give me a definition of safe speed? You can't give up that easy. Make an attempt. You're not on camera, I am.
Every vessel shall maintain the safe speed.
That is what the book says. Interpret that for me. What is safe speed? Alright, what about you?
So the vessel should be ready to maneuver.
Okay, that is. I'm okay with that, I accept it.
The vessel should proceed at a speed where it can be stopped within a safe distance.
Now you're using the word safe in another context. Now I will have to ask you, what is safe distance?
Distance to our position.
It is the concept. more than a quantum expression. Okay? Safe speed so that she is able to take proper and effective action in proper time to avoid collision. Now this will depend upon, once again, the prevailing circumstances and conditions. Whether you are in the open ocean, whether you are in narrow channel, coastal waters, in congested traffic, this depends on, that is what we are talking about, the prevailing conditions and circumstances. And in order to assist you to determine this, we have here, in determining safe speed, the following factors shall be among those taken into account. It's very, very specific as well as it is loose. It gives you a certain set of circumstances, but then again it also says you are the person on the spot, you make the best judgment. The prevailing circumstances based on which you will make your assumption shall be including the following, but it shall not be restricted only to the following. What are those? By all vessels. The first one, talk about state of visibility. Quite obvious. The second, traffic density. If the traffic density is like out in the open ocean, there is nothing around you. Your safe speed there will probably be more. Don't quote me, don't say because Captain Rao said in the class, I'm going to have a higher speed. Probably your safe speed there will be higher than what it would be if you are in congested waters. The traffic density includes the concentration of fishing vessels. Now the presence of fishing vessels, we have various rules in various countries. In some countries, fishing vessels, while they can fish in proximity of traffic separation schemes, they can be present in the separation zones, but not in the separation lanes. However, there are other countries where they can be wherever they want. In Canada, for example, they are permitted to fish inside the traffic lanes. And their take on the matter is you cannot restrict their right to fish. I turned around and asked the pilot, but what about my right to my safety? Well, Captain, he couldn't tell me anything beyond that. So, keep an eye out for this. And I don't expect that you will know the nitty-gritty of all these regulations of every country. But be aware that such a thing is also possible. Therefore, you be ready to take avoiding action. The maneuverability of the vessel with special reference to the stopping distance and turning ability. Once again we come to Mr. Prevailing conditions. Prevailing conditions again talking about the density, whether you will be able to turn around in time. It once happened to me, I was passing through the same southbound lane, passing Dover. And there was one of these cross-channel ferries coming out of the New Haven waters. I'm on the southwest bound lane and that guy is on my starboard side. My duty is to keep out of the way. I checked, and when he was passing my stern, he was half a mile clear. So I retained my course and speed. This idiot, I call him an idiot, he started altering to starboard, creating problem for me. He calls me up on the VHF and says, "What are your intentions?" We are in a close quarter situation. I wasn't going to answer to that. The mate was on watch. I told him, "You answer him." The mate told him, "You're half a mile clear when past my stern when you're passing me. So everything is clear." So I don't consider half a mile adequate clearance. I got fed up. There were ships around and I was going to get into the Sandati traffic separation scheme. So I did the only thing that was available to me at that time. I didn't become the chief engineer's favorite son. I took a full helm turn to port, took a 360-degree turn, and I came. Okay, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. You do get such people. Prevailing circumstances and conditions. This is what is the meaning of the prevailing circumstances and conditions. He is clear of my stern by half a mile. What was the clearance he wanted? Did he want me to stop my engines? Now this is in early days. We didn't even have this traffic separation schemes in the Dover Strait. There was only one condition. There was a warning. In this area, cross-channel ferries proliferate in their operation. In general, they will avoid impeding the navigation of vessels in through transit. Which was all very well. Those people they are maneuverable craft. They are always on maneuvering speed, whether they are on full, slow or half ahead. It's so easy for that guy, either if he considered half a mile too less, to take 5-degree alteration to port. Or slow down. No consideration for the prevailing circumstances. I can't go to starboard because there is shallow water there. So, these are some of the things that you need to take into account. At night, the presence of background lights, such as from shore lights or backscatter from your own lights, you have to be aware of this, that it will impede your being able to discern and recognize other craft in and around your course. The state of the wind, sea and current, and the proximity of navigational hazards. The draft in relation to the available depth of water. Earlier rules were very specific, and they had a section where they talked about an annex to the rules and gave you guidance on operation when you were operating with radar. Whereas here they have put in a section here. Additionally, by vessels with operational radar, the characteristics, efficiency and limitations of the radar equipment. How good your radar set is, whether it is a basic radar or whether it is a state-of-the-art unit which can do everything except make a cup of coffee for you. So, you should know the limitations of your equipment. As I said in the beginning, the importance is not only on what the equipment can do for you, but also on what it cannot do. You cannot go to your coffee machine, press a button, and expect to get the CPA and TCPA of all the vessels in your vicinity, nor can you go to your ARPA, press a button and expect a hot cup of coffee to come out from there. Each one has its own use, each one is specialized, each one is good for the purpose for which it has been manufactured. It can't do more than that. And like I said again, you are the most important person, because you are the one who will interpret the data that you get from this equipment. Any constraints imposed by the radar rate scale in use. Sea clutter. If you are using a large display, your range is small, therefore you will have too much of clutter. If you reduce the clutter, you may not be able to pick up small craft in close vicinity. So you need to be aware of this. The effect on radar detection of the sea state, weather and other sources of interference. And also understand that if you have a large ship passing by you, you're going to be in close quarters and you will have multiple echoes. which again are detrimental to your being able to interpret the data which is it's only water. Okay. Once again, spelling out further the possibility that small vessels, ice and other floating objects may not be detected by radar at an adequate range. The number, location and movement of vessels detected by radar. Some of the ARPA equipment on the radar sets that you have, you will have seen, those of you who have worked several different ships in the fleet, you will have seen that some can track up to 36 different ships at any given point in time. There are yet others who can only track 12 targets at a time. Once again, I reiterate, when we talk about ECDIS, I know you're going to get the radar overlay. You get the ARPA information, you get the AIS information. Use it only for situational awareness. Do not use the ECDIS as a collision avoidance tool. It has not been made for such. And at the moment, it will not be able to guide you adequately. The more exact assessment of the visibility that may be possible when radar is used to determine the range of vessels or other objects in the vicinity. Now, I give it to you and I suggest to you, when you are in good visibility, when you do not need the use of radar for enhancing your lookout capabilities, that is the time when I exhort you to use these radar observation charts, use your ability to plot. You don't even need these charts. If you have even an old paper chart, you can do the radar plotting on that. It's all a matter of triangulation, and the scale does not matter so long as the same scale is used for all the parameters. So that is the time when you get familiarized with the equipment. When you do the manual plotting backup, you are able to accurately assess the accuracy of the equipment so that your reliance will be either enhanced or reduced. It's all a matter of comparing one with the other. That is how we exist, that is how we can stop it. either you have understood everything which I have said, in which case I am an excellent teacher, or you have understood nothing, in which case I am an even better teacher. Huh? Any doubts at all on these rules? See, don't forget one thing. The rules are there. When you go for your examination, you are going to verbatim blurt out everything that is in there. That is not the most important thing. The most important thing is whether you have understood what you have read in the book. If you have understood what you have read in the book, then my purpose is served. If there is any area of doubt, if there is any area where there is ambiguity, you need clarification, that's what I am here to provide. Okay? So, if you have no other question, let's talk about risk of collision. What is risk of collision? Yes? The possibility that there can be a possibility of a collision. That is risk of collision. Possibility of there being a close quarter situation is risk of a close quarter situation. Now, how do you know, how do you assess whether there is risk of collision or not? The rule is a little more specific than just the observation of the bearing. It says that every vessel shall use all means at her disposal to determine the risk of collision. Earlier, they used to talk only about watching the bearing of an approaching vessel. They did not specify whether it is a compass bearing or what it is, but it was taken for granted it was a compass bearing. They did not specify. Now, talk about every vessel shall use every means at her disposal to determine risk of collision. What is this every means at her disposal? What is covered under this phrase?
Sight, hearing, equipment.
All right, that is your generalizing, sight, hearing, and navigation. What is specifically being? Yes, radar. Radar, ARPA. What is the full form of ARPA? Automated radar plotting aids. Well, accepting the fact about your limitations on the number of radar plots that you can execute, we now have the assistance of an automated plotting device which is capable of plotting several targets at one time and give you a readout, perhaps a constant readout, perhaps a queried readout when you so desire on one of the targets, telling you the possibility of a close quarter situation and or a collision. So every vessel shall use every means at her disposal. Tomorrow you cannot turn around and say, I had my radar off. My radar was not in use at that time. The question will be asked, why was it not in use? You better have an adequate answer for that. And I do not accept any answer. I didn't think it was necessary. Well then, my friend, you didn't think properly. The rule specifies, you shall use every means at your disposal. So you might as well use it. That is what it is provided for. Okay? Every vessel shall use all available means appropriate to the prevailing circumstances. Yes. Remember, this specification, appropriate to the prevailing circumstances, occurs again and again and again in the book. How do you determine whether it is applicable to you or not? Make an error on the positive side. It is there to assist you. Use the damn thing. I remember when I was a third mate, I sailed with the Komodo master, and we had two beautiful state-of-the-art Decca radars. And one morning, we were coasting. I was feeling lazy and I was taking radar bearings and plotting the position. The master came up on the bridge and he asked me, why are you using the radar? Good weather, mountains all over, marked on the chart. Take a bearing of the mountains and plot your position. And then he said something which changed my way of thinking. And he told me, when you really need the radar, you may not have it. What is the meaning of when you really need the radar? Only restricted visibility. That's when my thinking changed. And I said to myself, when I am a master, I will make sure that every person, every navigating officer will use the radar all the time. They will be familiar with the performance of the radar. If you are not familiar with its performance, as interpreting this gentleman's thoughts, when you really need the radar, you may not be able to extract 100% output from it. You have to understand, you have to become familiar, you have to be able to operate that equipment even in your sleep. That, to me, is important. The radars used to be switched on when controls were tested prior to departure port, and they were only switched off when finished with engines were run. And if we were going to be in port for less than 12 hours, the radar would be put on standby. The only stipulation I said was the watchkeeping officer shall decide whether to keep the radar running or to put it on standby during his watch. That is the only decision. Otherwise, the radar shall be on and ready for use. In use or ready for use. So, that is one of the things. If there is any doubt whether risk of collision exists, you shall take it that risk of collision does exist. It leaves no room for error in thinking here. Make sure that there is no risk of collision at all times. Now we come to the specific purpose. Proper use shall be made of radar equipment if fitted and operational, including long-range scanning to obtain early warning of risk of collision and radar plotting or equivalent systematic observation of determined objects. Is there any room for doubt here? Is there any room for ambiguity? No. The only question mark here is that if the radar is fitted and is operational, it shall be used, including long-range scanning, in order to obtain early warning of risk of collision. Assumptions shall not be made based on scanty information, especially scanty radar information. One bearing and distance off does not constitute a position. What does a position consist of?
Two bearings.
Three
bearings.
Yes, 3 inputs, a minimum of 3 inputs are required for a position to be called a position. You need to have triangulation. And what is more preferable? 3 bearings or 3 distances off?
3 bearings. Bearings.
3 bearings are definitely preferable to 3 distances off. But on the other hand, the 3 distances off, if you take from one side of the radar, there is more likelihood of the 3 coinciding at one point. If you take distances off from 2 sides, they will definitely cross at one point or the other. The one advantage of that will be, it will give you a cross on your course line. Maybe ahead, maybe behind, but you will be on the course line. Now here, no matter what the experts say, I have given you the various advantages and disadvantages. I will put it to you. Use it wisely. Use your experience in determining what you would rely upon. Okay? So you need to get familiar with the equipment.